Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm your English instructor, Mr. Ahmed Siddiqui, for your course of English first year. Today we are about to start a poem which is written by William Wordsworth. As we have discussed it earlier, that we whenever we read any poem, before starting reading that poem, we should know about the age in which it was written and the poet who has wrote the poem was written the poem. So this poem that I'm talking about is about a child, an innocent child, which becomes a symbol of innocence. And in the poem, we have another theme, which is known as again the mortality of life, that how life comes to its end. Sometimes very cruel in nature, the death comes upon. But nobody, no human soul in nature can avoid death. So we are learning about this poem, Lucy Gray. Like before, it had been discussed earlier that how do you conceive the poem? Means how do you conceive the idea? How do you relate your thoughts with the idea which is given by the poet? You have to read the themes of the poem. So we will read the poem later, but look, when we read this poem, we will have these four themes that been written on the screen. First theme is death and loss. These two things are marked by life, right? As long as you are living being, you'll have to be aware of these two things, that you will lose your loved one, you will come upon death, your loved one will come upon death. The another theme in the poem, which is beautifully being portrayed by poet William Wordsworth, is nature. He's talking the nature in good sense, in bad sense as well. How in bad sense, like it's talking of a snowstorm. You see, snowstorm, baraf ka tufan. So, snowstorm is the symbol of the death coming about or the threatening to life. Then the third theme of the poem, which is the most beautiful, and I think which make this poem a classical in the history of English poetry, is describing the innocence of a child. The child in the poem is Lucy Gray, and the poet has defined that how can we say that the children are innocent because of their nature, because of their thinking pattern, because of their viewpoint towards life. Then poet is also talking about the power of memory. How that this, whenever you think about this girl, Lucy Gray, after reading the poem, you will think of a girl in your memory who is always good to you in your solitude, in your loneliness. Whenever you think about this girl, Lucy Gray, you will feel the happiness inside. And the last theme is going to consider is the cyclical nature of life. Means, what do you think? What happens when a person dies? He remains in our memory. So it's a cycle. It's a cycle. A person comes and goes, but he leaves the ashes of his memory, which always brighten our heart and soul whenever we think about it. So after reading these poems, themes, all these themes, we must be very aware to read the elements of the poetry. That is, had been discussed that whenever we read any poem, we must have some critical analysis of that poem with specific consideration that what kind of poem it is and what are the different things which have been discussed into that. So this poem is a ballad, a nagma kind of thing, which whenever we read, it has its own musicity. It comes up with own suits and a relief inside. So you see the form of this poem, Yani, how this poem has been formed. So again, this poem, like other poems in our book, is been in iambic pentameters, like 5 lines are there and syllables and how they are matched. They are matched in a rhyming scheme of A B A B. What does it mean? That if you look at the poem, first line matches with B, and then third line matches with B. So we have a rhyming scheme, which has a poem rhyming scheme that I'm talking about, AB and AB. In this poem, again, whenever we have poems for kids, we see that there is a lot of imagery into it. What do we mean by imagery? Yes, we have read in a previous poems as well that the poet creates a picture of the whole scenario on our minds, not with the impact of visual effect, but he comes up with his words, which create a true picture. For example, to Lucy Gray, he says that she is a fairy child, means a picture comes into it, a child without any diplomatic thought and with innocence on her face, as well as in her doings. She is a child. So the poet Wordsworth is very classically explain the imagery, the use of imagery in this poem. बच्चों को जब हम पोयम पढ़ाते हैं या जो आपकी एज में थोड़ा सा हम पढ़ रहे हैं ग्रोन अप, तो ज्यादातर पोयम्स आप देखेंगे ऐसी यूज की गई है कि इमेजरी है, ताकि आप ज्यादा से ज्यादा वर्ड सीख सकें, अपनी इमेजिनेशन को स्ट्रॉन्ग कर सकें. Symbolism is there, means different kinds of words are symbolizing different things. For example, a cottage is describing something, a snowstorm is describing the death coming upon, the river describe the clear thought process, like a river is clean, the thought process of Lucy is clean. So these are called the symbolism, how the different symbols are used in a poem and give. Now we again come to figurative language, which has always been in talk in the class as well. For example, metaphorical use, ironies, and personifications. So in this poem, we find these three figurative language. Similes are there, then metaphoricals are there. Metaphorical complex sentences are changed into simple thought by using the right to metaphors categorically for giving thought about something. Now the tone of the poem. You will love to hear the poem in good voice, and if it is being read in a good tone, means you will be enjoying listening to the poem in a good tone. So this work of Wordsworth, Lucy Gray, is good, and it is coming up with some clear thought, right age specific poem. In this age when you are reading this, you are crossing your teenage and now you are entering a new phase of life, but you should go on with some innocence that Lucy Gray was carrying with her. So this poem you will now you see the question which I've been shared with our artificial intelligence, that we must read the poem with some explanation. Explanation is there, like this is the activity which has been done in a class, which will be done in a class. And it's talking about that a traveler is passing through and she met a little girl. A cottage girl means you can come up with an idea that a poor girl, a girl who lives in a small home, that is called cottage. And then there are sequence of events coming up, like he talked to her, offer her to go with him, but he says that he has some offerings which is she has to do for her father. He has to find her. So we find that innocent. And in the last, you see that clear haunted image that has been created in the whole poem. Lastly, it comes up to the death of showing the death of the girl. So it mourns our heart. It makes our heart go with this girl. So you read the explanation after reading the poem. So that would be really very beneficial for you. Okay, so you see that power of nature, snowstorm is coming, loss, the person don't want to lose the girl traveler, but he loses that person. Death is coming upon. So in an explanation, you see that how good is the okay. So these are some of the difficult words which are there in the poem. Easy word means because the poem is easy, so we don't find many difficult words. A bliss, happiness. I'm very blissful today. Solitude means when a person is lonely. What happens when a person is lonely? Like he met with God, he met with two thoughts. Gazing to stare someone, like when you are interestingly watching someone and looking and observing things, is called gazing. So these are the words which you should know before you attempt the question answers and the central idea of the poem. How do we centralize the idea? Very simple. Like we read the poem and we try to convey the message of the poet in simple words, in our own thoughts, what the poet want to say, mixing them both, and we present the central idea of the poem. When you are writing a central idea, also talk a bit about the critical analysis of the poem which you have done already. That it creates a good sense of checking for the checker, for the examiner, and he assess you for good marks. So you see, these central ideas are really very important. Giving some examples from the poem, like here we see that there is using some lines of the poem in the central idea that will show your strength that you have read the poem not only for notes, but you have had the opportunity to read the poem, to grasp the idea which is given by the poem, and you have learned something for your real life from this poem. Okay. And finally, the best part that you always go for your exam, that what are the some important questions which might be there from the poem Lucy Gray. Again, first question is central idea, like second is the critical analysis of the poem. For example, how snowstorm is symbolized and how now what Lucy Gray's. So kind of a poem, kind of a question could be there in the exam, that you have to prepare a poem on the same theme, but in your own words. So I have taken the example of this. So you see that this is a poem which is very much close to Lucy Gray, but obviously it's been written by not by a great poet like Wordsworth, but a simple person. So, but it is carrying the simple idea. So I recommend that this question is very important, a creative kind of a question, which you have been asked, that you have read, understood, and you have been well versed with the vocabulary that you have to use. Write the poem in your own words, with your own inculcation of thought, with the characters that you want to use. For example, I have changed Lucy to Lolita, means I was using Lucy, but it's Lolita. So this is a question which might be there in the exam. So I hope that this notes will help you out understanding the main themes of the poem. I'm going to meet you in the class with the discussion forum about the poem and some reading of the poem and your question answer session. See you inshallah in the class. But I'd be really very glad to see you after you read this poem. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself until the next lesson. I will come with you. This is your instructor, Mudassir Ahmed Siddiqui. You may reach me through the Google pages that will be shared with the students, Google Classroom pages, comments, share your ideas, and make yourself prepared for exam and allow others to learn from your ideas as well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.